بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا بالقاسم محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين.
Hatred, you will not attain perfection. Remove it. Separate yourselves from the enemies of Ahlul Bayt. That's the easy part, right? Now let's look at the other two criteria. When that woman goes back to her husband, she comes back, she says, the two first parts are easy, it's the last two parts which are difficult. Then the reply comes, you're a muhibb, you love us, but you're not a Shia. What are the other two criteria? She turns around and she says, look, you do everything that we like. If that means waking up for Salatul Layl, then you wake up for Salatul Layl. And you move away from those things that we dislike. All of those things which we call an abomination. Something which is makruh. Move away from it. Go back 600 years ago, fuqaha only had wajib and haram, or halal and haram. Why? There weren't 5 criteria in those days because they would observe to such degree amongst themselves. But nevertheless, look inside of yourself and see, can I observe those 4? So man replies, I can do the first 2, I can't do the last 2. Understand what made her. Imam Hassan says. He says, one night I got up, the tradition now says this. Says that as he walked, he saw that there was a light coming from a room. Walked into the room, saw the mother was standing there praying. He says, mother, you pray for everyone in Medina. All night you're praying. Are your feet not sore? Daytime you're up, nighttime you're praying. You pray for everyone. Why don't you take care of yourself? She replies, it's the haqq of the people. Haqq of the peoples. That woman who prays for other people before her own children. You know what the ummah did to her? 2 weeks time you'll see this. Ummah broke her ribs. No, ummah broke her back. You know what it means by breaking someone's back? They destroyed her. That's what the ummah did. That lady would stand there at night time praying for that person, for that person, for that everyone. That lady who says that after the Prophet died, Jibreel would come and comfort her, and she would write, Amir al-Mu'mineen would write all of the events that are going to take place upon a Shia. Do you think that you're not the dua of Zahra? She prayed for all of you in this room and everyone else. You know when she prayed? She prayed for you that Allah would create a nation to cry over Hussein. If tears come into your eyes because of that Imam, it's because a mother prayed for you. That is the power of that mother when she prays. Nighttime she's standing there, she's praying. Imam Hassan's mother, look, praying all night, you become weak. You know the tradition says? It says, you know the Prophet, when he Surah Muzammil, look at Surah Muzammil, you know what it says? Rasulullah, stand up at night time, but a little bit, a little bit. Why? Adam was told, extend your prayers. Nuh was told, extend your prayers. Ibrahim was told, extend your prayers. Musa was told, extend your prayers. When it comes to the final Prophet, Allah says, rest, cut down your prayers. Why? Look at the tradition. The tradition says this, when Rasulullah would stand, a woman would stand behind her, and behind her were 2 children standing. As Rasulullah would go down into ruku, and the whole night he would spend there, Zahra would say, what are we doing, Father, tonight? He says, today we are doing sajda, tonight we are doing sajda. Allah brings down a message. It says that her feet swell up. I can't take it when her feet swell up standing at night time. Cut down your prayers so that her feet don't swell up. So that her son's feet don't swell up. Allah, mercy. Look at the mercy of Allah. And you think to yourself, who's the first people to cause pain? The only thing that gave Zahra physical happiness in this world, you know what the tradition says? So she's lying there, lifeless. Amir al-Mu'mineen comes. Tradition says he picks up her head, puts it in her lap. Tradition says he begins to cry. Tears begin to fall on the face of Zahra. She lifts up a small arm, she begins to rub her face. The tradition says Amir al-Mu'mineen begins to cry more. He says, Zahra, why do you rub my tears on your face for? No, the tradition says, It says, because I've heard from my father Rasulullah that when a madloom person cries, those tears that come out, mustajab. So you know what she replied? She says, Ali, I don't know a person more madloom than you. And then at that moment she begins to talk to him. She goes, Abul Hassan, do you remember when we got married? She's leaving this world. The only happiness? She says that you remember when Jibreel came down and said, Mahar, what do you want in your mahar? I remained quiet. Allah says, I'll give you the heavens and the earth. Says, I remained quiet. Says, I'll give you the seas and the oceans. I remained quiet. Jibreel then said, Allah asks you, what do you want? You know what she replied? She says, I want shafa of all of my nation. All of those people who are going to cry over my son Hussein. I want to intercede for them on the day of judgment. Says Ali, Allah sent a stone from heaven to seal the deal. Come and give it to me so that I can take it in my grave. That on the day of judgment I can stand up and I can look at all of creation and say, all of these people cried for my Hussein. I can take all of them, I can take him to heaven. See, that's her reality. Even at the last minute, she remembers that. Two things she remembers though. She remembered you at her last moments of her life, and she remembered one more person. You know that was? She says, when my son Abbas comes into the world, give him my salam. I'm not here to recite a musibah, but you know what these names represent, and you know what this woman represents. She was somebody who was a madluma. If you look at her history of life, we've looked at how great she was in terms of creation. But have you ever read history and seen? You know, as a child, all of the children would leave her, desert her, because she was the son of the Prophet, daughter of the Prophet. You know what it says in tradition? I'm just going to read 2 parts and that's it, we'll finish. It says that when Khadija passed away, Rasulullah went to Taif. When he was coming back from Taif, he was covered head to toe in blood. They stoned him. As he begins to come back, he remembers. He says that, look, I've got a daughter who's only 5 years old waiting for me in the house. He says, how am I going to go back? She's a yatima, her mother just died. If she sees me in blood, what's she going to say? The tradition says Fatima was waiting on the door. Daughters of Ahlul Bayt wait for their fathers. Zainab was waiting for the door for Amir al-Mu'mineen. One 4-year-old girl in Karbala was waiting on the tent for her father to come back. Says that as she was waiting, Rasulullah with tears in his eyes, heavy-hearted, begins to walk to the doors thinking, what am I going to say? What the tradition says that this small girl comes forward, she sees her father. She doesn't let him realize though what's in her heart. In the tradition it says 4 or 5-year-old with small arms go around the knees of the Prophet. She says, Father, come down. Comes down. With her hand she wipes away his tears and she removes the blood from his face, and she says, don't think that because my mother isn't here, Fatima's not here. That, in the tradition it says, that's when the Prophet of God then said, Fatima, you are my mother. She took the burden of pain from the Prophet and she put it deep inside of herself. Today, if Islam is alive, it is because of her fruits that Islam is alive. But woe on the Muslims. And look what they did to her. They didn't leave a part of her body which was left without. Look at the tradition. Sometimes we don't even narrate this. We'll narrate this when Ayyam Fatimiyya comes, to see what all-out ambush means on the house, how they surrounded her and they beat her. It's in the traditions. And we'll narrate this, and there's no harm in narrating this. But nevertheless, if that person is sirrullah, if that person who's 70,000 veils, and as we discussed, that person who upholds the arsh of Allah, Alam Kawn rests upon Zahra, that reality that the angels prostrated towards, and when she left this world, Amir al-Mu'mineen, when he comes to the grave and puts her into the grave, he begins to scream, Rasulullah gave me her as an amana. Take your amana back. But be careful, her ribs are broken. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi tahirin.